All right, welcome everyone. My name is Steve Weber. I'm the Global Solutions Engineer here at Sophos for the MSP program. Today we're going to be talking about the XG Firewall high availability. So what this is going to mean is you could actually have two XG firewalls. This is typically done with hardware, but it can be done in a virtual environment if you want to go that route as well. And that's how I will be showing it today. But what we have set up is you're going to have your primary and auxiliary unit. And we have two different types of configurations that can be done on the XG firewall. The most common configuration is going to be active passive, meaning that you have your active unit running, it's handling all of your connections and data, or simply have an auxiliary unit sitting off to the side as a passive node, just in case that primary unit was to fail for whatever reason. All information would then fail over to the auxiliary unit and it would take off and run like normal. As you'll see here on the actual demo, you will lose some packets on there going out to the internet when we're testing. And that is normal as it is handing that off, but it should be very minimal. Most applications, all the application data is going to be fed over to the auxiliary unit for that. Most applications will simply keep on going without any notice to the actual end users unless they are doing something very active like I am inside of the environment. The other option that you have, and this is one that's not as commonly used, is going to be active-active. And that means both of the firewalls are online at the same time. They are both working as a load balanced pair, processing the data out to the internet. They still work as a failover pair as well. If one unit fails, the other one will take over the entire load. But typically, it is set up to where it is a load balancing between the two. So I want to go through and touch on some of the high availability requirements before we actually get into a hands-on with the lab here. On the help file, so if you go into the XG firewall and you go into HA and you click on help, it's going to bring you into the help section about the particular, that section on the actual XG firewall. If you scroll down to the bottom on the left-hand side, which is the link here at the bottom, you're going to see a startup guide for high availability, and there'll be a prerequisites. This is something I would recommend that you definitely go through and take a look at. So first off, when we're talking about HA, both the primary and auxiliary unit have to be the same model and same revision. So if you're running an XG210 Rev 3 and the other unit is a Rev 2, there is a potential that the HA is not going to work and is not going to be supported. The same is for if you have an XG230 and an SG210 or an SG230. You will not be able to use that in there. So you will not be able to mix between the SG and XG models on there, even though they are mostly identical. So all the devices on there need to have the same number of ports and interfaces on there. And this does include any FlexiPort modules that you have installed. You also need to make sure that both of the firewalls, when we're first setting up HA, have the same firmware version and hotfixes. Now, one restriction on here is going to be the wireless model. So the 100 series has a built-in wireless. Uh, Another reason that I don't recommend utilizing the wireless modules here is you won't be able to utilize HA. We cannot support HA with those wireless models. So if you want to have the HA and you still need wireless, use the Sophos APX models. It's going to give you much better coverage and you're going to put the access point where the actual people are. Going over the networking and access policy real quick, and I'll leave this on screen for a second. You can quickly scan through it. There's a couple things on here that I really want to point out, and I have them bold on here. First off, make sure all the cables are, that are going to be monitored for those ports are connected on both devices. So you can't leave the HA unit unplugged from the LAN, WAN, and any other place that it is going to be connected for a monitored device on there. You do need a dedicated HA link port. That dedicated link port is going to be a DMZ type zone. So that interface, when you go through and you create it on the XG firewall, which we'll run through here in a minute, you will select that as type DMZ. You also need to go into the device access for the DMZ and make sure that you enable SSH on there. I also recommend enabling ping on there. Make sure it's just quick and easy for troubleshooting, that you can reach out to the other device. It is visible and will accept a ping request. Those are the biggest components on there. You will have to ensure it has an IP address that's the same on the network there. That way you can talk and reach out to those devices. But those top ones on there, making sure that it's part of that same interface, making sure it's part of the DMZ zone, and make sure you have SSH enabled on there. Those are going to be critical. Licensing. So we're going to spend a few minutes here. So licensing, when we're talking about an active passive setup, which again is the most popular setup with the XG firewall, active passive requires a license on the primary device. On the auxiliary device or passive unit, you do not need a subscription. Now, if we're talking virtual appliances, and we have the base license that you need to purchase in a virtual license, or you're doing the virtual hardware as a service through the MSP program, you only have to have the primary unit license. You only need a base license for the primary unit with a subscription on it in order to enable the active passive. The virtual license that is your passive unit does not need to have a purchased base license. It will share the base license from the primary. When we're talking hardware, obviously you are going to need to purchase two pieces of hardware that are identical. You will only need to license the primary unit on there. And that license can be termed or it can be monthly through the MSP Flex program. If we're going into active, this is going to require a license on both devices. You will need to make sure that on both pieces of hardware, you have the same subscription purchased for both. You also want to make sure that you have your support subscriptions enabled for both as well if you are purchasing on term. If you're doing it through MSP, again, making sure that the devices are set up, they're ready to go, they are completely licensed and online, and then you can set up your active HA unit. But both of the devices will need to be licensed. That is going to be the same in virtual as well. If you are doing an active setup in a virtual environment, you will need to have both of those virtual licenses fully licensed, both base license and the subscription. So just a few unsupported setups here when we're talking HA. Cellular WAN configuration is not supported in HA. So if you are using the FlexiPort module on the device or you're using any USB cellular devices with the XG firewall, we cannot replicate those from one device to another. IP aliases and VLANs on the dedicated HA port are not supported. Overriding the MAC addresses, dynamic IP addresses on any interface while in active mode, not supported on there. Session failover with a dynamic interface is also not supported on active passive. That means if you have your WAN zone set up with a dynamic address from your service provider, if we have a failover on that particular device and it's not static on there, it will not be able to have a session failover, meaning we won't keep that actual session live. All that means is that if they're browsing through a site and they're connected, they are going to have to reconnect, re-authenticate to that particular service before they get on. This device will still fail over. And then lag ports are not supported on the configuration, HA configuration interface either. What we're going to do is we're actually going to get into the demo here. I'm going to walk you through my environment. Again, if you guys have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Happy to go and answer those. I will be pausing throughout the demo here as we do have some natural progressions in there which we have to wait for, and we'll take time at that point to answer any questions. All right, so let's go ahead and minimize this. All right, to start off, what I want to do is I'm going to pull up my environment here. And just want to show you what we have set up. So I've got an HA XG here. I've got my primary and my secondary. And if we come into this particular device here and I come into the edit settings, just want to have you see what we have set up for the actual network interfaces. And again, this is going to be key. In virtual environments, you need to make sure all of your settings are exactly identical between both the devices. But when you're talking an environment such as hardware or any other virtual environment on there, this section here is something that you really need to pay attention to. So this is my LAN zone here, my workshop network on there. I have my primary and secondary internet connectivity set up on there. And then you can see I do have a fourth port on here, which is going to be listed as my HA port. This is a separate network for that dedicated connection on here. Both of my firewalls are set up the exact same way, connected to the exact same networks on there. So just wanted to give you a real high level, what I have set up on there. And what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to run through this. Now, I'm going to leave this screen up here probably throughout the majority of the actual demo. And the reason for this is I want you guys to be able to see the actual primary and secondary units. So when we go through and actually set up the HA on these devices, I'm going to actually pull up the log, the HA log. I'll show you how to access that as well so that you can see exactly what's going on behind the scenes when HA is being set up. So to start this, we're actually going to start here on the primary unit. The primary unit is my 20.1 appliance. Just go ahead and refresh my browser since it has been sitting here for a moment. All right, so once we're in the XG firewall, now if this is a brand new version 18 firewall, as you guys have probably already noticed in most of your firewalls, if you have upgraded to version 18, you will get this master storage key on here. I would definitely recommend that you get this done and taken care of. This just adds an extra layer of encryption and protection for your backups and imported configurations on the device. So make sure you set this up. Don't skip it like I'm doing now. It only takes a second. And just make sure when you set this up that you do document that inside of your systems. So I am going to skip that because this is not an environment that is going to stay active. So no sense in me putting this in place. What we're going to need to do on the actual primary unit and where we're actually going to start this is going to be under the network. So the first thing we have to do on our primary unit is set up the HA network. So you can see this device is set up. It's online. I have my connection to my LAN, both of my WAN connections on here. Everything is static inside of my environment. This is going to be my HA interface here that we're going to set up, my port D. And if you didn't set this up, so let's just jump over here, system services. This is where HA is found. There are two modes. We'll talk about quick mode here at the end, but for what we're going to be doing today, we are going to be using the interactive mode. And you'll notice if I come here, it says it's got a alert on there, unable to find a dedicated HA interface. Again, reason for that is I have not set up that HA interface, which is again why we have to start here and we need to go ahead and enable HA on this particular interface. So from here, again, going to select that as DMZ, and we're going to go ahead and provide this an IP address. And I'm just going to go ahead and assign this a full /24. Again, demo environment. You can assign it whatever you want. Just make sure it is a valid range that both of your devices will be able to utilize. So if you just want to use a /32 on there, you can absolutely do that if you want. Again, for my environment, that is what we're going to go ahead and set up. Now, I could also come here to make this just easy so I know what this port is. I can go ahead with version 18 and rename that port. And we're going to go ahead and update that interface and save it. So this is now going to be my 172.16.254.1 connection on my HA interface. The zone is going to be DMZ. Okay, once that is set up on there, okay, we have this set up. We've got that up and running on here. So the next thing that we have to do is we're going to go under administration and we're going to come under device access. And by default, you will notice that SSH is not enabled. Now, this does not generate a warning, and it will actually attempt to start the HA with this not enabled. If this is not selected on here, you will see all kinds of problems. Your HA will never set up fully functioning, as the passive unit will be the only one that it'll be able to see that's online and will never be able to communicate back to the primary node. So again, make sure DMZ zone, or if you set up a brand new zone on here, that you select it as a DMZ zone and you turn on the SSH. For troubleshooting, again, I always recommend turn on the ping. You can turn this off later once you ensure that everything is set up and working inside of your environment. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now at this point, we are ready to start setting up the high availability on the primary unit. So this is going to be my primary. It is going to be active passive. You can see here we have options for auxiliary. We also have options for my primary with active active. Again, there is a quick mode option on here. We are not going to utilize that here today. This is something that, again, I will talk about this in a little bit, but there are certain components with version 18 right now that don't work with the quick mode. So what I would recommend, and it's a very simple process, is utilizing for now the interactive mode on there when running through and doing the setup. You can see now that my dedicated HA link, I no longer have a warning, and it selected that dedicated HA, the only port that is available for the DMZ on there. Now, all we need to do is run through the rest of this. What is the dedicated IP address, IPv4, for my peer HA unit on here? So in this case, it's going to be my 172.16.254.2. We're going to select the ports that are going to be monitored, and make sure you do not select your HA port inside of there. And on this one, it's going to be the administration port setting. So on your actual HA device, it will be set up with an IP address. Mine is currently set up with 10.10.20.254, and that is going to remain on this device. That is going to be the administration port for the auxiliary device, the administration IP address. So we're going to select port A, which is going to be my LAN, and then we are going to select that auxiliary IP address inside of here. Now, there are a couple options here at the bottom. If you are running in a virtual environment, you can choose to utilize the hypervisor assigned MAC addresses. This will ensure that you do not need to turn promiscuous mode on the vSwitch. If you do not enable this, then you will need to go into your vSwitch and make sure that promiscuous mode is set up for all of the different networks you have set on there. As I already have that set up inside of my environment, I'm going to leave that unchecked. The other one here is fail back to primary device after it recovers. Now, this is completely up to you. I don't recommend this simply because it is going to cause another failover inside of your environment. And that's probably better suited to do once the device has been recovered and you're at after hours. Again, there will be a break in connectivity, very a brief break in connectivity as it flips back over to the primary device. And typically, you're not going to want to do that in the middle of the day, and you're not going to want the XG firewall to do that automatically. All right, so we have all this information set. Before I go ahead and initiate the HA on here, what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to our auxiliary device, our passive unit. So I will need to go ahead and populate that passphrase in there. So this is a brand new device. Again, just going to refresh my page here. And we're going to walk through. So brand new device out of the box. This is exactly the same as if you get it from your hardware device and you first boot it up. Again, just make sure it's on the latest firmware or the same firmware that you're running on the primary unit. And you are going to have to walk through some of the basic configuration on here. We are going to have to provide a password for this device. This is mainly going to be used when we access the device for any troubleshooting. Again, do not check this install firmware automatically, and you will need to accept the user agreement at the bottom. Now, before we continue, we're going to go ahead and select this connect as HA spare. And what this is going to do is ask for the information about this dedicated HA unit. So the peer serial number, so what's the primary's serial number in there. We're going to paste in that passphrase. We're going to select our dedicated HA link. We need to make sure it's on the same one. On my primary unit, we used port D. And then we are going to go ahead and assign the IP address that is going to be used on here. Now, keep in mind on my other unit, I used a /24. This is grayed out and it is easy to miss on there. So make sure you come down into this here and make sure you select that /24 as well. If not, you're going to be wondering why your device is not able to connect because it is not on the same network mask. So at this point, I have everything set up in here. We're going to go ahead and hit apply. And you'll now see that this device will be set up and connected as an HA spare. As we continue through this, now, if this is hardware, go ahead and get it connected to the internet because you want to go ahead and have the device register itself with your My Sophos account. If it's a virtual appliance, you can go ahead and skip this and you can continue offline. So again, hardware, I would recommend just go ahead through this setup here. All hardware devices have their base licensing. You want to make sure that is online and available and is already registered into the same My Sophos account as your primary. It'll just make it easier. Let's say you have to RMA the primary unit for whatever reason and transfer its licensing over to the auxiliary unit. It's going to make it much easier if that device is already registered into the My Sophos account to now have it assume the primary role. As you get the RMA unit back, it'll now assume the auxiliary role. For this device, again, I am going to continue offline. It is just a virtual appliance, so I do not have anything for this. And it is going to let me know that I am skipping some of the registration components on here. And you'll see my configuration summary on here. The only thing we need to do is it's going to run through the dedicated HA setup. and hit finish. Now, this is going to take a minute for this to actually apply the configuration and reboot. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the logs for the HA. So to do this, you're going to go into the device console as you saw me do there. If you didn't catch it on this one, you'll see it again here in a second. And it's system HA show logs. All right, and we'll do the same thing. So if you missed it on here, it's going to be option number 4 for the device console. That's going to bring you device console system HA show logs, spelled correctly. All right, so this is going to take a moment here. And what we can see now is we can see we have a peer. Port C is found down, but going ahead. And what this is going to start doing at this point is it's going to start setting up all of the information and syncing all of the data over to the auxiliary unit. And this is a point where you're actually going to see, so at this point, this handle stat change right here, this lets us know that we've got to the point where it initiated a reboot and we now have HA is now enabled. Now on my actual device here, you can see that I do have the HA status. We are in active passive. I am currently in status standalone. Primary device was rebooted after it synced all of the data over there. It's now going to come online. It's going to start a resync, and we're going to start to see some information populate here. And we'll actually see an indication from the firewall that everything is now ready to go. Now, on a smaller 100 series or a smaller virtual appliance like I'm running right now, you may notice that the UI during this time becomes non-responsive. That's completely fine. Everything is still online while it's doing this. You can see I haven't missed a heartbeat as far as my connectivity out to the internet. So while this is continuing through and we're going to wait for the actual HA to get set up and let us know that everything is good. We can also come over here. We can log in to this device. Again, this is more just so you can see what's going on the back end when you log into the device, and you can get into the HA logs. Again, option 4, and it's going to be system HA and show logs. So this will just let us be able to keep an eye on what's going on with the secondary unit. Now, the secondary unit will take its booting up from fresh. It's got to get all of the XG services online and started, and then it'll actually get to where it's starting to synchronize with the main unit and get online. Okay, perfect. So we are moving along in this. You can see here from my top, from my HA is now enabled. We've gotten some additional information as far as the device becoming online. We can see the syncs and the HA has become successful. Let's go ahead and refresh my page here. And we can now see the device here is listed as primary and our secondary device is listed as auxiliary. Now, what you will notice, especially with a virtual, now with a hardware, you will not get this on there. It should still preempt it with the HA augs on there with the serial number. On this one, it's actually going to generate. Remember, we didn't have an actual serial number for this device, so it actually created an auxiliary serial number for this particular unit here. And we can then see, based on the actual information from the serial number, that this is the auxiliary unit. Now, everything's up and running. I'm going to give this another second to continue to sync. Looks like almost everything is done on there. Should be syncing contracts. That's all set. All right. So we're up and running. We could, if we wanted to, come into the actual device as well. So we can go ahead and do the same thing, system, and we'll do HA, and we'll do show details. Basically pulling up the same information we have on screen here. So if you have access to your firewall via PuTTY, you can actually see what's going on, what's happening, all of the configured details from this particular page as well. So inside of here, what I'm going to do is we're going to keep the log open, and we have our device set up here. So this device is online, it's going, and we're going to go ahead and cancel this and just reset it back up. Now, I'm able to ping out to the internet without a problem. Now, I don't want to shut this down. Normally, I want to go ahead and just turn this off straight out, just as if it had a complete power off, meltdown, and went away, just so we can see exactly what happens during that entire process. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go back into my VMware. I've got this host selected on there, the primary unit. Going to go to actions. We're going to go to power. So I'm not going to go to shutdown and do an actual, uh, normal shutdown on the device. I am simply going to come in here and flip the power switch on this. That's going to cause that firewall to go away. You can see here that I have, it's no longer moving. I have lost connectivity for a moment here. I've got some unreachable. And in the meantime, over here, we can see on the secondary unit that we have successfully gone through and moved all of the information over, and my connectivity getting back to the internet is enabled on there. If I go back to my primary device, which again may still take a second, log in. Now, again, I'm logging in at the main IP address here. We're going to ignore my warning that comes up on the screen. And you can see here the serial number for this device here is going to be that HA auxiliary. If we come under my system services, we can see that the local peer is the HA auxiliary. It is currently in standalone mode. The peer is currently in faulty. So if that device comes back online, great. It'll start to resync all of its information, which we will do here. I'm going to go ahead and power that device on. That'll start the XG firewall booting up. This will take a few moments because it is, again, going to have to boot up the firewall, get all of the services started on there, and then resynchronize the data. And then this will still remain as the primary, because again, we don't have that selected at the bottom to automatically fail back over. And then my other unit here will show up as the peer unit, the auxiliary unit on there. Again, we're going to go into the device. We're going to go to 4. And we'll do system HA show logs. Oh, and helps if I hit the right key. And what this is going to be doing is it's going to go back through. It sees that there's a failure. Basically, it's going to start to synchronize itself to the primary unit as soon as all of its services are online. So there will be some failures on here as it's still building up connectivity. The device was just turned back on. All of the services have not started yet. Once everything has started, we will see a synchronize between the devices. So at this point, this guy is still my primary, and he still does not see the other unit online as of yet. I'm going to go ahead and get logged into my Sophos Central account. And what we're going to do from there is we're actually going to get the XG firewall set up on the Sophos Central account via management, so you can see what an HA firewall looks like when it is in the Central Firewall management component. All right, we can see over on the side here, we've got both of the devices. We can see at the bottom here, it's enabled the HA set up. It's got a sync on there. We'll jump into that device again here in a second to see what it is telling us. All right, from this device here, we're going to go ahead and refresh our page. And we can see here, still local peer is the HA auxiliary unit. It is now the primary. My other peer, which is my actual primary unit that has all my licensing, is the auxiliary inside of there. Again, it has not switched at this point because we don't have that set at the bottom here to automatically fail back over. Now, what's going to happen if I switch over to my passive device? So I want to go ahead and now make the switch. So we go back to my primary device here. We're going to have to sit here and hit the switch to passive. This is going to let us know that that device will be restarted, which you will see here. My secondary, which is one that is currently active, will be restarted. Again, we'll do the same thing. We'll bring this up. That device just shut down. We are transitioning over to the primary unit. And again, you will notice you will get a few drop packets on there as it's going through that. I had 3. This again is really only noticeable if you are doing something similar to like a ping packet. We're making sure that every single packet going out the firewall is coming back in. If you're just browsing a web page, if you're surfing out on the internet, you're doing YouTube, those components on there will not be affected by the actual failover. So we're back online. Our primary unit is available. This is going to go through and start to work on getting my secondary unit back online as the auxiliary. And at this point, we're all set and ready to go. So that's how we set up HA on the actual firewalls. Go ahead and log back into this device, get to my primary. All right, this device is online. Let's just verify that our HA is set up and working. And we can see here, primary and auxiliary. All right, HA is set up. So let's get this into Sophos Central. So we're going to come under Central Synchronization. And you'll see here that, and if you're not used to how this looks under HA, you'll now notice that it lists both of the devices inside of here. And we actually get the option to register both devices for HA. So we'll go ahead and fill this out, making sure that it's got my correct email address. Now, you will still need to do the normal process for synchronized security. You need to, at this point in time, still have a unique email address account for that customer's central admin account. All the synchronized security components still remain as of today. So make sure you have that unique email address and password set up for that particular customer. It is only one unique account per customer. In the future, we will have a token-based onboarding system that is coming in the very near future here. We're about 3 to 6 months out on that. So you can look forward to that as make it a much easier onboarding process for the synchronized security. So good sign on here that this is taking a minute. If I got my username or password incorrect, this would fail immediately because it is sitting here in processing, which will take upwards of about a minute to register both of the devices. See here, successfully registered to Sophos Central. Now, just like the standalone unit on here, it is only going to turn on the security heartbeat and the synchronized app control. The Sophos services still need to be enabled. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and enable the Sophos services, and we're going to turn on management. Now, if you wanted, you could also send reporting. Since I'm not doing any reporting for this device, it is just a test device. You can send your reporting logs up to Sophos Central as well for the central firewall reporting. We're going to go ahead and hit apply. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to turn on my central services. And while we're waiting for that, I am going to jump into my central admin account. I'm going to come under firewall management. We're going to come under firewalls. And we see both of my appliances sitting here waiting. So we've got that pending approval sitting here, just like you would normally see with synchronized security. So both of the devices listed inside of here. We're going to accept those services. Now, this will take a moment. It is going to do the normal process. This will remain gray. If you do see this gray and the firewall has been in there for quite some time, it is likely that that particular firewall is version 17. Version 17 firewalls can be managed from here, but the connected status will stay gray. You still have the ability to remote access those devices, but they do not have access to features such as the grouping, the central firewall manager on there, as well as the firmware upgrade component. All right. All right. So we can see this one has gone through and it has connected. My auxiliary unit has been removed, and we now have this big old green on there, HA. So it's still pulling the status from the secondary appliance on there. But we can see this is connected. All of our information, all of our serial number information. There's my peer serial number on that. So if I needed to, I can now get into that particular device. So this is how it looks when we look at the central management for the XG firewall and you have HA enabled on those devices. We will bring both devices into the central management, and once it is accepted for services, we will bring them under the same account and mark it as HA inside of the environment. If this one was ready for a firmware upgrade, you would be able to do that right from here. You can schedule the firmware upgrade just as we see here. Again, it's going to start with the auxiliary unit, get that one upgraded. Once that one's back online, it'll then go over to the primary unit, get that one upgraded, and you'll be all set. Definitely want to thank everybody for joining. This recording will be put up on the YouTube channel as well. So if you have any other questions, comments, you can put those on the video on the YouTube channel. You can also reach out to your MSP team, East MSP, Central MSP, West MSP at sophos.com. Be happy to answer any questions for you, be able to help you with that promotion as well for the free HA appliance. All right, hopefully you guys learned something here, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Have a good day.